Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here on a Monday evening. We're so glad you joined us for the Eagle Family Webinar Series. My name is Samantha Caruth from New Student and Family Programs, and we're so excited to introduce you to one of our amazing leaders at AU, Dr. Bridget Trogden, who's the Dean of Undergraduate Education and Academic Student Services. And we've got some amazing content to share with you this evening. Bridget, it's all yours.
Great. So I'm glad to be able to get started. And Samantha, can you go ahead and make it where I can share screen? And I know people are still coming in, which is great because so we're both live streaming here on Monday, November 25th, 2024, right before Thanksgiving, kind of intentionally, but also people can view the recording later. So you might be looking at it later, maybe even looking at it with your Eagle child that you support, your Eagle student, and that would be fantastic too. So, this is kind of a follow-up, and I reached out to Samantha and my colleagues in student affairs to see if, we could do a special session just kind of before finals. So, in the college world, we typically have our semesters are about 15 weeks. So, we started in August, and the way that the calendar falls this year, the students get back from Thanksgiving break, they have one more week of class, and then go into finals, and then they're done for the semester. And I talked about this a little bit exactly 4 months ago. We had a webinar on July 25th, 2024 about starting strong. And we've got the link to that too, and we can share it if you haven't seen it. And it talks a lot about learning and what's the difference between high school and college. And one of those, the biggest differences is the pace. The pace is just so much faster. And in college classes, students are typically learning in a semester what in high school they would do in a year. And so that means it's a lot of material in a compressed amount of time. And so having a plan and a strategy is really the way to go. And so I'm going to share a few things. What I'm primarily going to go through to kind of kick us off is our academic coaching library. If I put that in the chat, Samantha, can they see all of that? I don't think they can, but it's okay. What you think they can see it?
I'll repost it so that
Okay,
everyone
great.
can.
Okay. Well, and so I'm going to share screen because I picked a few things to go over because it's just too overwhelming to try to do everything. And also in the phase that we're at right now, we want to really hone in on what the students might be needing to know as they're preparing for finals. So you can see the screen that says academic coaching resources at the top, right? Okay. So Samantha's going to share that link. And if you're looking for this later, you can Google it. Our good friend Google American University Academic Coaching, and you can get to the academic coaching resources page from here. So we have colleagues in academic coaching, which is part of the unit where I am dean, that have put these together. And there's so many different resources for the students in different kinds of categories. Some of those are really good at the beginning of the semester. So if you want to look through these with your Eagle or encourage them to do so, that would be really good. We do also have the ability for our students to meet with academic coaches. They can meet with librarians, they can meet with writing tutors. They've got so many different kinds of support, and we share all of that as well. So some of the things that I wanted to go through, I've got four. So there's one about assignments, one about test prep, one about essays, and one if, oh my goodness, I'm behind on everything, what do I do? Which hopefully none of your Eagles are doing, but just in case, we can cover those as well. So the part of the reason that I really wanted to be able to do this too is, I have been a professor for 20 years. If we haven't met, I look forward to getting to meet you at any future parent engagement. So my doctorate is in chemistry, and my faculty appointment at AU, because I'm also a faculty member, is in the School of Education, because that's the kind of scholarship that I do. I study learning. I study interventions that faculty can make to improve student learning. And I've published a lot in those different kinds of areas. And so, as we're thinking through how students can improve, that's something that really matters to me as an educator, not just, as the undergrad dean. But when I was teaching a lot of chemistry courses, organic chemistry courses, et cetera, I would regularly hear from students who would say, oh, Dr. Trogden, I studied, and I didn't do well. And I know that they were studying, but it was how were they studying? Where was their plan? A lot of that comes in with metacognition and self-control and things that I talked about in July, if you want to go back and look at that webinar at some point. But at this point in the semester, there are still a number of tips. So one of them that I'm going to go through is organizing, planning, and prioritizing. There is a really good resource on breaking down assignments. So helping students think about what is it that the professor wants. So these are actually in our Microsoft system, so you might not be able to access them. So I pulled them into a Google Doc, and I'm going to share that as well. And Samantha, if you can repost that, that would be great. Here I'm getting into the chat. And so we want to make sure that you are able to have these as well. And so whenever we're looking at things like breaking down assignments, so this is something that you can ask your student, you know, if they call you, if they're worried about something, oh, I have this paper, what are the questions that you can ask? And I'm going to go through that kind of by the end too. You know, what can they look at in looking at the assignment? So it's really good if they can kind of think through, you know, they've got some space for brainstorming, but what are the steps that they need to complete to finish the assignment? Because many assignments aren't just things that students are going to be able to do in 5 minutes. It might be something that a professor gives them and it's not due for a couple weeks. It might be a paper, it might be a project. It might be a data set, it might be a case study, it might be a test, it might be a lab report, it might be an experiment they need to do. There's so many different kinds of assignments. And so these are just some ways for the students to think about how to break down what that is and what are the steps that they need to do. You know, so start with reviewing to submit it, input the steps here. How much time do they think that they need for each step? And I really like this tip to work backwards. Like if you have a paper, the last thing that you want to do is go through and edit and proofread. You don't want to do that while you're still revising. And so where's the time that comes in? So this is just a really good sheet that kind of goes through those different options. If students want to talk through this with an academic coach, they can. There are other resources as well, some different tips, including Writing Center, language coaching, or research librarians. I checked today, students can get an appointment to meet with a research librarian tomorrow, virtually. They can meet in person every day of the week. And these are free / prepaid in the tuition. So none of our resources cost any students any extra money because we want them to succeed. Our supplemental instruction are some of we used to call them killer courses. Now we really call them gateway courses. So especially for first-year students, those are courses in statistics, economics, intro political science, chemistry, biology, those kinds of subjects. And they often have a student who sits in on the class as well. Peer-supported student support. So that's where we have tutors. We have math and stats tutors available. So these are things for students to think about as well. So in thinking about breaking down an assignment, our academic coaches also gave an example. So this might be an example. Assignment is a research paper. A research paper can be difficult to do because you cannot start a research paper the night before. I've seen students try to do it. It does not work well. So this is a great example. So if your Eagle is home for Thanksgiving, you're maybe going to be on the road, ask them, and I've got some questions I'll give you at the end, ask them, do you have any research papers? How are you preparing for that? Those kinds of things. So, you know, these are some things high level, right? So I'm breaking down the assignment. The professor wants 4 to 5 pages. That's important. 4 to 5 pages is very different from 20 to 25 pages. Say to use a research librarian, it'd be good to go to office hours with a plan. And if the paper is on capitalistic theory and education, the focus in this example would be how K-12 focuses on capitalistic theory. Must have scholarly sources as well. So these are just some of the different steps to go through. And so, you know, this would be an example of how long it might take to do each one of those. And this would probably be for a paper that is due the 22nd of February in this example. And so the student would be starting again, in this example, February 4th. That's quite a ways out. That's about 3 weeks. But, you know, if a student does have a research paper due during finals week, That's 3 weeks from now. And so what are the different components? Break those down and think about the hours that you use. There are so many different timekeeping tips as well that are in the resource library and a number of other places. Breaking things down into 15-minute increments, studying for an hour at a time, which is one of the reasons that all-nighters are so terrible because your brain just cannot function like that in terms of cognitive load. So this is a really great resource for students in breaking down assignments, like if they have a large assignment to do. So that was kind of one of the ones that I wanted to get a chance to go through with you. And that, again, is in our academic resources under organizing, planning, and prioritizing, breaking down assignments. There's a fillable PDF and then a sample. And if students don't want to use these exact PDFs, that's okay. They can do something else in a planning notebook and a number of other different places. So that's something that they can really kind of think through. Okay, so the another resource that I wanted to talk through is a test prep and study strategy. There are so many different strategies here for our students that can be incredibly useful. And I really like the 7-day test prep planner because like the last one was an assignment that could be for anything. And in this case, this is whenever students have something big coming up. So, it's preparing for exams primarily. So whenever our students do have things like exams in some of those courses where exams are the major way of assessment. And a lot of those are in math classes and science courses, in econ courses. Sometimes students might have things like blue book exams. So they're essay exams, but they're contained and they write them in a little packet called a blue book. So there are many different ways of doing these. And I put that in the Google Drive as well. So the 7-day test prep planner, I'm not going to go through every piece of it because it can seem a little bit overwhelming, and it's not. But the gist, okay. And so here are some of the overall instructions. But you plan out what you're doing on a few different days, and in a nutshell, about 7 to 10 days before the exam, you get organized. You review your notes and quizzes. You identify difficult areas that are giving you problems. Because whenever you're having a test, or if you're having a cumulative exam in particular, it might have been, got through that material in October, but you really didn't learn it and you're being tested on it again in December. So you need to focus on that material from October rather than just try to glance over it. And so this is a really good chance to do that. So if you're reviewing, you're identifying areas that are giving you problems. So this is what the students are doing. They can create to-do lists and then they can start to fill out the prep chart. And that will help them figure out how to organize. So this, and look at this. This isn't you have to study all day to prepare for this exam. If you look at it on day one and you do the math and add it all up, that's less than 2 hours. That's more like an hour and a half. But it gives you a chance to, for about 15 minutes, review the test guidelines and instructions. Do you have anything from the professor? Has the professor given anything to the student? These are great things for the students to be able to use. And then think through, resources. Where are their resources? Are there office hours that the professor is doing? Professors have office hours every week. Is there tutoring? Is there supplemental instruction? Do they need to go to a writing center? Do they need to talk to their advisor? There are so many different things that they can ask before the exam. And then this is the big piece: create the study plan. What will you study? When will you study? How will you study? So, I am looking at my calendar and I'm going to carve out, 7 to 8 p.m. on Tuesday. And I don't have a class or any other commitments. From 3 to 5 the next day. So what are the actual dates? Write those in the calendar. That can really help. And then compile. Where is all the stuff? Is your student taking notes? Do they have classwork, handouts, readings? Do they have things in a notebook? Are they in a binder? Are they all in Canvas, which is incredibly common? Do they have a textbook? Some courses have textbooks, some don't. We actually have textbooks that students can use in our ASAC, so our academic support area in Butler 300. We have textbooks in the library. There are so many different options for students to be able to get these. So that's really the first step is they can spend the time planning, and it doesn't take that long. A little bit of time, you just have to hold yourself to it. So then the next day, it's going through that material, spending about 45 minutes on an overview. So again, if they have their notes, their hard copy notes, a binder of hard copy materials, is there a website? Is there a Canvas? Go through those and kind of build a stack. Sometimes we call this chunking as well. So it's really 3 areas. So material that confuses you, things you kind of don't understand. What are the major concepts in this economic theory that you still don't get? If you're in a philosophy course, where are, what is the difference between, this theory and this other theory? So just lots of different things that the students need to think about what still confuses them. Materials that and I like this phrase, the so-so, right? It's okay. I think I kind of get it, but not totally. And then the material that you know well. So you chunk those out. And then the second session, if needed, right, start using your resources, deploying those resources. So then the rest of the days involve interleaving. So I'm not going to go through these exhaustively, but if you look through day 3, 4, 5, and 6, you spend more time on the material you don't understand as much. And this is a great chance for your student to work with other students, if it's a class that has a peer facilitator, some of those do, they might have a supplemental instructor embedded. Where are their resources where they can go to study that? So, or to figure out the material that still confuses them. So then as they go along, they're spending more time on the harder, I don't want to say harder because it's not always harder, but they're spending more time on the material that they haven't yet mastered and less time in the material that they already know. Because, this is just part of being a human. We'd rather do the easy things, and you can't spend all your time on the easy things. There's a reason sometimes that the things that you're not doing as well at, you don't want to spend time on them. So spend a little time, get that material more under your belt, and then spend some of your time on the so-so and on the material that's easy. So this is a really great example. I put something in as well. I've used this. I taught an engineering class several years ago for first-year students, and we actually created these test prep plans. So this is just an example. And this is a 5-day rather than a 7-day. But we called everything kind of prepare and review. And so, and it's work starting with the older material first, the chapter 1 and then chapter 2 and different hours on each one. And what I really like about this, and, this is a great thing for students to think through too, is how can you prepare? Can you create study guides? If you don't have one already, you might have one from a course. Can you look back at the textbook, read the textbook. The textbook provides the additional context. Making flashcards. Now you can do this electronically. And the tool of actually making the flashcards is more important than just going through them, because as you're making flashcards, even if you're using something like a Quizlet, you're using AI, whatever the students are doing in creating that, they're also organizing their information. My son is a senior in high school, and he was studying for a calculus test a couple weeks ago, and he said he was using AI to give him problems so that he knew the kinds of problems that he needed to work on. And it's been so long since I've had calculus. I cannot say this accurately, but it would be like, can you give me a derivative problem with blah, 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 and it would give him that problem. So, and so he knew what he needed to know, but then it was giving him some other examples. Taking old tests if you have them, and then reviewing is, going back and reciting main ideas without looking at them, practicing the flashcards, rewriting things, mapping things out. I cannot tell you how many times I'll walk around campus, and it makes me so happy every time I see it. I'll see a student in front of a whiteboard. We have whiteboards all over campus. I mean, they're everywhere. They're in the library. They've got movable ones. The entire walls in the Hall of Science are whiteboards. They're all over campus. And students will be there with their markers. They got their big headphones on, and they're just sketching things out. They're owning that material. They're taking that material and making it their own, which is incredibly important for metacognitive strategies. So I'm going to stop sharing just for a second and see if there's anything in the Q&A, because I've got another couple tips to go through. So many buttons going on today. All right. So we don't have anything in the Q&A. Okay, Samantha, if there are questions in the Q&A, please stop, just stop me at any point because we can be very casual with these two. Okay, so gone through a couple things. I know this can be kind of boring, right? But these are incredibly, I kind of nerd out on learning. And so these can be incredibly useful tips and strategies for students on how to spend their time and how to achieve. So if we've gone through, breaking down assignments and then the 7-day test prep, I wanted to go over one more about essays and then kind of what to do if you feel behind and everything. And that there's an important component to that too. All right, so I'm going to share again. And so we went through the resource on 7-day test prep. Again, there are lots of others here for the students. They can be overwhelming, which is why I just picked out 4. So I wanted to talk a little bit about writing. One reason that there are many reasons that I like working at AU, but one of them is we still put a lot of emphasis with our students on writing. Of the 3 universities I've worked at in 20 years in higher ed, I think we have the best writers, and that's incredibly important because it's not just the writing itself. It means that there's also thinking that's going on behind the writing. But writing assignments can be intimidating for students as well. So we've got a number of different writing resources, and there's one here that's an essay breakdown template that is kind of like the breaking down assignments that we went over earlier. But this one is kind of specific for essays, and it's incredibly useful. So I also put that here in the Google Drive, and okay, I did want to go through this one first. So and there are lots of different boxes. So when students are able to access these from the academic coaching website, they can download them onto their own computer and use them. Or if they don't want to use this Excel template, they could, they can just make their own, make it on a big whiteboard, giant piece of paper, something like that. So these are just different components to think through for students. And again, working backwards can be really useful because there are a lot of steps. It can't just be write the paper, submit the paper. There's a lot of other pieces that go into it. So when my child was, I think, a sophomore in high school, he had a class where he had read a lot of research papers, and I taught him how to front load the research. So finding and vetting his sources and organizing that information really well. And then he got to where he could sit down and write a really good paper in an afternoon. And then, it would still need to be revised and everything, but it's because he spent more time front loading that research. And I distinctly remember him telling me, "Oh, Mom, now this is hella easy." And I thought, yes, it can be when you use your resources. And so, the thinking through the different things that you need to do with the paper, once it's done, there's still other steps, right? This is a great time to work with somebody else, refine, especially if you're newer at writing, or for our students for whom English is a second language, can be so useful to meet with a writing tutor to go through it and say, is this what you really meant to say? There are a number of different essays that they can do for revision, and then the edits come later. But it helps the students think through the things that they need to do. Again, working on your time budget, the goal, the due date. So this is an example of what this might look like. And, one of the first things to do is, always review the assignment. What does it mean? When I teach first year writing, I teach students how to take that assignment and annotate it. What does it mean? What am I saying that you need to do? What am I saying that you will be graded on? What is the purpose of this assignment? So spend a little time with that. Working through the thesis, connecting with professors on a thesis is always a great idea. Making appointments with the writing center, outline. It's a really bad idea to sit down and write without any idea what you want to do or where you want to go. And of course, as you have an outline, you're revising it, but you've got to have that outline. Like, I have an outline for today, even though it is oral rather than written, right? So you've got an outline and you're kind of following that outline. And then doing the research that they need to do, and then starting to actually draft the language that they need to share. So this is a really good example for an essay. Works really well for a research paper as well. A number of different kinds of things that you can do. All right. See something in the Q&A. Do students have one exam per day? I am going to, that's a great question. They shouldn't have more than 3 in any one day, but I will pull up the registrar's office website and we'll look at the exam schedule together in just a little bit. That's a really good question. And we're casual, so I said ask the questions at any point. Okay, we're good on that one. All right, cool. So one of the things that I wanted to share is just what I'm worried about. I'm behind on school, right? If the student thinks they're behind on everything, how in the world am I going to get this all done? First off, they're really not. Okay, I think, and I deal with this all the time. So it's not just I think. I know. I see that we often have students who they have a lot of competing demands on their time and their mental energy. And sometimes something can seem like it's derailing when it's really not. It's okay, you have a big assignment coming up, make a plan, and then that eases any of that that stress about the oncoming demand. And so sometimes even making out a map like this of what you still need to do in the semester is really beneficial. In my last job, my faculty appointment was part of a department that was engineering and science education. So working with graduate students who were earning PhDs. They all had master's degrees in STEM, but were working on educational projects for their PhDs. And we actually did this with all of our graduate students. We had a whole week, we just called it writing week, and everybody would really make a plan of the things that they needed to do. And we made these public, and the whole department was the accountability partner for each other. The faculty did it too. And so people would sometimes put up, the test they needed to finish writing, the grading they needed to do, the grants they needed to work on. And so it's the same kind of thing. It's just a little bit different, kind of in faculty world, but thinking through what you still need to do. So this is a great, kind of one sheet per class. Students can, like any of these, they can download them and go through. But look at a class. Is there anything that's missing? This can often happen. Most of our faculty members do use Canvas, and then the Canvas gradebook, the students can see if they have something that's not graded, or that they did not submit. And sometimes they forget, which drives me nuts, but I understand that I'm a planner. And so, is there anything that's missing? Is there anything that's upcoming? Are there any concerns with low grades, absences, academic alerts? I talked about those in July. An academic alert is when a professor sends up a red flag, that is, this student is not doing well in this class. I'll tell you, because I see these a lot, it's nearly always attendance. The students are just not going to class. So always go to class. So it's a great thing to ask your student, do you have attendance concerns about any of your classes, and maybe work with them on those expectations for attendance. Or if they have low grades. So, those are great things to kind of write out. So for each, and then action plan. Okay. So there's sometimes some things you can't control, some things you can. There might have been a low test. Okay. Well, sometimes, and every professor kind of does this differently because they're the experts in their learning environments. But sometimes if a student has a low test, a professor will replace that test with a final exam, or they'll let the student do test corrections. When I teach first year writing, or really anything, when I teach doc students, when I teach anybody, I will say, if you don't like your grade on a paper, let's meet or an assignment, let's meet about it and do it again, but it also kind of depends on the class and the context. So this can be a really good thing for the students to kind of go through class by class. And when you get it all out on a page, sometimes you realize it's not that bad, or this is manageable, or okay, well, I know what I need to do now. And so making that plan can be a huge relief. So they can do this for any class. And I also like how our academic coaches came up with other tasks. Are there other things that are due at this time? Over 20 years ago, 20 and 30 years ago, I was finishing senior year of college and, submitting PhD grad applications, right? And those were all due in December. And so those are really important kinds of tasks. Are there other things that you need to do? And then you can think through what's high, medium, and low priorities. And so then this is the blank template. So the other piece is just then make them out by day, use colored highlighters, use this kind of Excel sheet or Google sheet if you need to. What are the days? Where are you going to focus on? So, this is an example then. So if this were a class, 300 level class in SIS, missing assignments, right? So these hadn't been done yet by that student. Upcoming assignments, right? So this would be a high priority, probably because it's worth a lot of the grade. Are there low grades? Are there absences? So in this case, the professor actually sent an academic alert. Those go to the student, they go to their academic advisor. And it's not punitive in any way. These do not show up on students' transcripts or anything. It's just another way of saying something is not going where you're meeting expectations. Let's focus on making a plan. And nearly all the time, the professor says, "Come see me. Come talk to me." Right? This is an example. You're missing a few things. Email me so we can discuss an extension. Professors want our students to do well. So so that's a really great time to see what the professor had said. So action plan, email the professor, right? That's great. Our academic coaches will meet with students and help them email a professor if they don't know how, or they feel that it's intimidating or they don't know what to say. Attend office hours, break down assignments. Look at that. We went through a resource on how to do that, right? So you can make things like this in every course. And there might be some courses where there's nothing missing, where there are just upcoming assignments. There might be some courses like this one, where there weren't any low grades, right? And so absences, this student had 3 absences, 3 are allowed, then don't miss class again, or if something extenuating comes up, let your professor know. And so, so these are great things to do. And then after that, move into the plan, right? So that looks at the course and then move into the plan of what are you going to do each day? Email the professor, right? That's a great thing to do. And it's really helpful to have the plan as well, because then the students can see things that they need to do that are in somebody else's timetable. Like if they need to meet with a professor, meet with an advisor, meet with an academic coach, set up an appointment with a resource librarian or subject librarian. We work really hard. We care about our students, but we're not always available 24/7. And so being able to do those things earlier to make the plan to meet with that person to get the information you need to keep checking off the tasks is incredibly important. So much of this is just task management. So last thing that I had, and I put all of this in an overview as well, is just some specific questions. And I'm learning in this AU Dean of Undergrad Education job what kinds of things are most useful for parents, and so I'm going to keep adding more and more of these.
Oh, there's a question. There's a question related
Yes,
to professors notifying
perfect.
students.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question.
Those
So
academic alerts.
yes. So academic alerts. Do teachers warn students about their performance in class and grades? Typically, yes. Typically. And so we don't have required days where like academic alerts have to be submitted by the 4th week of the semester or the 8th week of the semester. It's really when, as the professor is evaluating the student's performance, which includes the assignments they're submitting, if there is late work, because if there's late work, you can't evaluate the student, or if they're not coming to class, whenever the professor sees in their evaluation of the student that there's a concern, they will submit that academic alert at that point. So that's a great question. I'm going to add this in here. Do you have academic alerts for the semester, right?
Do you have the action plan to share screen with us as you're reading through?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to stop sharing. Thank you. Yes. So this was, so what I was pulling up here is in the Google Drive. I just added, so this is, my overview of what I was sharing. So these were the things that we were going through, but specific questions, so things that you can ask your student, what are the small and large assignments you still need to complete for the semester? just, and that doesn't mean you think that they need to report to you or something, but you even asking that question, can, spark their thinking about it. And, I mean, students need break too. You know your Eagle. Most of them, it's not going to be useful to be in their face every hour on the hour for the next week, until they return to campus. But these are good questions to ask. So what do you still need to complete for the semester? Do you have things that are due the last week of the semester? Are you going to have a final? Do you have a project in a class? Still want to look at the calendar too. I did not forget. We'll look at that in a minute. This question, how do you know what your professors expect of you? For the most part, we tell students, so there will be rubrics, there will be, this is how you will be graded and evaluated. This is what percentage of this grade this will be. This is what an A assignment looks like. If I'm teaching something like organic chemistry, general chemistry, biochemistry, I often do give study guides, and I'll let students know the things that I expect them to have in their heads. Like they need to know their amino acids in biochemistry, but they don't have to memorize extensive pathways. I'm going to ask them to apply that information instead. So I'll often let them know exactly what it is that I expect in that regard. And if you don't know as a student, if your Eagle doesn't know what the professors expect of them, ask. Ask the question in class, send them an email, go to office hours and go through those things. Don't say what's on the test, right? That's weird. But, what do you expect of us? How do you suggest we prepare? Those kinds of things. Another great question, for your AU student, what steps have you taken to plan out your time and strategies? That's what we've been talking about the last 37 minutes. What are the things that you've done? How are you planning out your time? You have enough time. But how are you making use of it? And I didn't say this earlier too, but I think of it where if a student has, let's say, 3 major assignments due during finals week, and just for simplicity, let's say they're Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Don't start looking at the Wednesday stuff when Monday's done. Don't start looking at Friday when Wednesday's done. Right. So you can't just do one thing at a time. They're like crescendos. So if your Monday assignment is critical, and so you want to spend a lot of time preparing for the Monday, but as that crescendo is increasing, you need to also maybe Sunday, Monday, or 6 or 7 days before, make your plan. What do you need to do for Wednesday? Whatever that thing is. And so, what are the steps taking to plan those out? And then, this is where these kinds of plans come in. And I really like this I'm behind on school action plan resource, because usually they're not. But, where do you have low grades or grades that don't reflect your best work? Do you have academic alerts? What did the professor say in that academic alert? And a lot of these are just great questions to ask your student. The academic alerts are typically, I want to help you, come work with me. This was the question for up here. So will the material be on final exams or assignments? So the things that if the student has low grades or grades that don't reflect their best work, I'm going to move that up here. And so real time, it's going to bother me, so I was in the wrong place. Okay, so will that material be on final exams or assignments? So you can't, like in general chemistry, the first semester concepts they don't all build on each other like they do in some other classes, but there are some concepts that if you didn't get it earlier on, like in chapter 3, it's going to be on the final. And so you need to go back and look at that again. So those are great things to ask the student. Will the material that you didn't do as well on be on the final or in final assignments? And then ask them, what can you do to help you learn that material better? What is your strategy? What is your plan? You can't just say, oh, well, that doesn't matter. No, it matters. Professors don't get a lot of time with our students. We get, about the equivalent of about 150 minutes a week in a 3-credit-hour course for 15 weeks. That's it. And so we don't spend time on things that don't matter. And so if the professor covers it, if it's on an exam, if it's on a test, if it's on an assignment, it matters. How can you better learn that material if you didn't learn it well the first time? Okay. And so those were the last pieces of questions that I had. I'm going to see what other kinds of questions we might have here. Okay, so there was a question, is there a way to find out about our students' absences from school? You need to ask your student. So, you know, I think sometimes there's some confusion about what FERPA means. I don't have that information. Honestly, I do not, I do not have it. There is no master Excel sheet of every student and whether or not they're going to class. I don't have it. It does not exist. If a professor sends an academic alert, that's something I can go in and look up. We don't send those to parents and families. This is something for you to ask your student about. And you know, and there are some professors that don't require attendance, and I think that's their right. When I teach organic chemistry, I never required attendance. I did a quiz every single day in the first 5 minutes of class. And, you know, if the students missed it, I would usually work with them. But I didn't require attendance because, you know, they need to be able to do that work as well. In some other classes I did, but we don't have that information at a whole. And so it's really good idea to ask your student. And maybe that's a different kind of question is, you know, are there classes that you've been missing regularly this semester? I said this when I did a parent webinar in July, and I contend to it. If I could do one thing to help learning at AU and every other college and campus, I would like sprinkle magic sleepy dust on campus every day at midnight and make them go to bed. They need sleep. Our students, they have adolescent brains until they're about 25, and they need more sleep, and they need regular sleep. They don't need to swing back and forth, be up till 3 a.m., have an 8 a.m. class, sleep for 6 hours in the middle of the afternoon. Like they need regular sleep because they still have adolescent brains. And so when students are skipping class, that's usually the main reason. They're sleepy and they're tired and they like their nice warm beds. And so it's really hard for them to get out of bed and go to class. So these are great questions for you to ask your student as well. Okay. Did another question come in? Oh, yes. Time management. Yes, yes. Elizabeth is asking about time management. Absolutely. The big problem, it's time management. And then also, you know, there are just so many have tos and want tos. And our academic coaches, I do get data, like we respect our students' privacy, but I get high level data on what the students talk to our academic coaches about. And the number one thing I think is time management. 43% of their appointments out of all the different topics, 43% of them are about time management. And those are really good ways to start the semester. You know, how is it that you are going to manage your time? How are you going to budget your time? And then how are you also going to deal with the things that come up that you didn't think about? And so, I mean, so much of college is time management. And so the tips that we've been going through today are, we have 15-week semesters. This is week 14, right? So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about, well, let's just start over on the calendar on a time management plan. That needs to be January. Right now, it's how can we make the best of the time that we have now? So very important things. I did say that I would look at the final exam schedules. Let me just pull that up. And they rotate, and sometimes those exam schedules are different. So I'm going to put this in the chat, and I think Samantha might have to send it again, but then I will share screen. So I just Googled American University final exam schedule. So our registrar's office is in charge of all academic records, so they keep these. And so the final exam schedule for this fall, it's based on when students' current classes are. So based on what their class times are, it says when their final will be. And so if they this is a really common time. If students typically have class 9:45 to 11, typically it's a Monday, Thursday, or a Tuesday, Friday. So depending on when their class is, okay. So if it's typically a Monday, Thursday class, the final exam is Thursday, December 12th, 8:10 to 10:40. So same thing if it's sometimes some classes are 3 hours or 4 hours. But if they have a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday class that also meets at that time, So it says when those finals would be. So like if their class was 9:45 to 11 on Tuesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, the final would be on Friday, December 13th. Final exam at 8:10 on Friday, December 13th. Thank you, universe. So like if they have a class in the afternoon, they would follow the final exam schedule here. Okay. And then we also have some other kinds of blocks. So the faculty in the class should be telling the students when the final is. They should have that information. It should be on the syllabus. It should be in Canvas, things like that. So this is when the students' finals are. So they should be able to look that up. But this is public, and you can see that as well. So always a good thing to think through. Yes, Gulnar, I see you. I saw you were on here too. I know I owe you an email. So everybody else knows that I know you owe you an email. So we'll do it. Yeah, time management. There's so much, with apps and emails. Do they get a similar webinar? That's so, uh, I wish, right? And so we do a number of different things with the students. Like they do have, meetings with their academic advisor that they can schedule. We do have the ability for students to meet with academic coaches. Those schedules are filling up. So like based on us having this conversation, if your student hasn't gone to talk with an academic coach, that would be a really good thing to do. And then, if students have more with wellness and time management, I know it takes a village, and so we're part of the village, you're part of the village. Their students have to kind of figure out what works for them. I don't want to put my own child on the spot, right? So I'm not going to tell this story, but in working with first year students over many years, I've also learned some things that they can do. Like they can set limits on certain apps on their phone. Like because it's not just time management, it's self-control, right? It's making that time calendar and then doing those things. I think I said this in July because it just really resonates with me. Julius Irving, Dr. J, basketball player, he always said that being a professional is doing the things you want to do at the times you don't want to do them. So it might be, okay, well, I want to major in economics. I like the study of economics. Oh, but it's Tuesday, 7 p.m. I just want to sit here and scroll through TikToks, which are also designed to be intentionally addictive. And so, if your student is having trouble limiting themselves, they can go in and set their own timers on their phone where it will give them 30 minutes a day on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat or whatever the thing is. And when that's up, that's it. And that can be a really good way of kind of limiting themselves. I know that the pressures are so real. I'm so glad social media did not exist when I was in college for a number of reasons. But it's really hard on them, and we have more supports than ever before. But it can also be really overwhelming. So that's why we have a village. All right, Samantha, that's everything I had.
I think so. I think we're at the end of the questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for putting great comments and questions into the Q&A. We're recording this session this evening, so this will be on the Parents and Family website, webinars page for you to come back to watch with your Eagle. It's a short snippet of time, go through those resources. And again, these are resources to give you the tools to tap them on the shoulder, give them a little nudge, give them a reminder, remind them of what's available to them. As parents, none of us can do it ourselves. We had our chance. It's now our chance to really be at their elbow, giving them those extra support. So I think that is our role. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, taking those tools back to your Eagle. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. The schedule is up for throughout the year. Thank you for joining us. And if you celebrate Thanksgiving, we wish you Thanksgiving wishes, and just good break wishes is really the one for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Have a great evening. Thank you, Dr. Trogden. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.